This is Sky News at 4, the headlines. Boris Johnson claims the UK has evidence Russia's got stocks of the nerve agent used to poison a former spy and his daughter.
But Russia has not only been investigating the delivery of nerve agents for the purposes of assassination, but has also been creating and stockpiling Novichok.
As investigations continue in Salisbury, international chemical weapons experts prepare to visit the UK to carry out independent analysis. Blizzards and freezing temperatures bring deep snow and travel problems to many parts of the country. As passengers are rescued from a bus that nearly skidded off a hillside near Manchester, police warn drivers to stay off the roads. Turkish forces take control of the Syrian town of Afrin after a 2-month-long siege. And Vladimir Putin looks set for 6 more years in power as Russians head to the polls.
In sport, Southampton have beaten Wigan 2-0 to reach the FA Cup semi-finals. Leicester and Chelsea kick off in their quarter-final this hour. And
very good afternoon to you. Boris Johnson says the UK has evidence that Russia had been developing and stockpiling the nerve agent used to poison Sergei Skripal and his daughter Yulia for up to 10 years. That's despite repeated denials from Russia that it's ever had any stocks of the deadly Novichok. Tomorrow, international chemical weapons experts will visit the UK to investigate the substance used in Salisbury. The Foreign Secretary accused Moscow of lying.
We actually have evidence within the last 10 years that Russia has not only been investigating the delivery of nerve agents for the purposes of assassination, but has also been creating and stockpiling Novichok.
so that was...
In a moment, we'll be speaking to our correspondent Ashish Joshi, who's in Salisbury. But first of all, our chief political correspondent John Craig is in Westminster for us. And John, Boris Johnson not holding back here, placing the blame firmly at Russia's feet.
Well, he's written a newspaper article today in which he says the latest tit-for-tat expulsions are futile, while Jeremy Corbyn is perhaps being steered into a less controversial position by his leading ally, John McDonnell.
OK, John, thank you. Well, let's go live now to Salisbury, and Sky's Ashish Joshi is there for us. Ashish, we hear these independent chemical weapons experts due there tomorrow. Why has it taken so long? This all unfolded 2 weeks ago.
Because there's a process. The Prime Minister, Theresa May, would have asked.
OK, Ashish, thanks for that update. Now, heavy snow has fallen in many parts of the country, causing major problems on the roads and leaving dozens of trains and flights cancelled. And with freezing temperatures continuing, the disruptions set to continue in many areas. Well, yellow severe weather warnings are in place across the country, with amber warnings for snow and ice effective today across the southwest of England. Up to 15 centimetres of snow is forecast in some areas. That's around 6 inches. And temperatures will be somewhere between 2 and -2 degrees Celsius. Of course, the equivalent of 35 to 28 degrees Fahrenheit through the day. But wind chill will make it feel a lot colder than that. Katerina Vitozzi has the latest.
The Beast from the East Mark II. And it's not just people that have fallen foul of the icy conditions. Katerina Vitozzi, Sky News.
Well, let's go to Syria now, and Turkish soldiers and their Syrian rebel allies appear to have captured the northwestern Syrian town of Afrin after Kurdish YPG forces pulled out. Well, a spokesman for the rebel fighters said they entered the town centre before dawn from 3 fronts, meeting no resistance. But a war monitor said clashes continued in parts of the Kurdish-held district. Well, Afrin is one of 3 Kurdish areas in northern Syria on the border with Turkey. Thousands of civilians have fled following heavy airstrikes in the last week. And elsewhere in Syria, a separate offensive in the south of the country. Up to 25,000 people are reported to have left the besieged Damascus suburb of Ghouta today as the Syrian regime closes in on rebel fighters in that region. Well, our correspondent Dan Whitehead joins us now. First of all, just talk us through the situation in Afrin at the moment.
Yeah, well, this has been a 2-month operation led by the Turkish military alongside Syrian rebel allies. It's called Operation Olive Branch. It's been running since the 20th of January. It's included a lot of intensive ground and air offensive operations. The aim for the Turkish government is to oust the YPG, People's Protection Units. It's a Kurdish military group. Turkey sees it as a Syrian offshoot of the PKK, which it says is a terror organisation. The YPG says it's not affiliated with it. The PKK has been waging an insurgency inside Turkey since the mid-80s, so it's an ongoing issue for Turkey. Now, pictures have appeared today showing the Turkish military placing the Turkish flag over buildings in the city centre in Afrin. And we heard from President Erdogan earlier as well, who said that the city is now in total control.
Most of the terrorists have already fled with tails between their legs. Our special forces and members of the Free Syrian Army are cleaning the remains and the traps they left behind. In the centre of Afrin, symbols of trust and stability are waving instead of rags of terrorists.
The British-based Syrian Observatory for Human Rights says more than 200,000 civilians have been forced to flee Afrin in the last 3 days alone. They say around 1,500 Kurdish fighters have been killed during Operation Olive Branch. We have heard from the Syrian side, the Syrian Kurdish officials. One official said that the war against the Turkish occupation will change now from a direct confrontation to guerrilla warfare, is how they describe it, hit-and-run tactics. So by no means is this situation over, but it is complex because it is a complex dispute because the YPG has received support including arms, from Washington. It sees the YPG as a crucial part of the fight against terror and Islamic State. Of course, Turkey sees it very differently.
OK, Dan, thank you. Now, in Russia, Vladimir Putin looks to be heading for an overwhelming victory today in the country's elections. Mr. Putin set to be re-elected as president for an historic fourth term, which will make him Russia's second longest-serving leader behind Joseph Stalin. Well, his main political opponent has been barred from ruling. We can speak a bit later on to John Sparks, who's in Moscow for us. Of course, he'll have the very latest developments for us a bit later on this story. But obviously, we will have that in a few moments' time. You're watching Sky News. Coming up, action from today's football and a dramatic game between Scottish... Welcome back. Let's cross over now to the Sky Sports News Centre for an update from there.
Hello there. Southampton have joined Tottenham and Manchester United in the semi-finals of the FA Cup. There's more live now on Sky Sports News. We're back later. See you then.
Well, it's been a bitterly cold day. Plenty of snow. Beast from the East is back. Let's see how the weather's looking.
Beneath pink skies by the Taj Mahal, or as the sun sets in the City of Angels.
It'll be mostly fine tomorrow, although there will be a few coastal showers and the wind will be easing. For now, though, the Met Office has amber weather warnings for snow over southwest England and yellow warnings for snow and ice for many other areas. Met Arian also has issued its warnings. There'll be widespread snow showers in the afternoon, which will be frequent and prolonged over the southwest of England. The snow showers will be fairly isolated overnight, with most central and western parts turning dry, but they will take quite a while to die out in the southwest. It'll be freezing with a risk of ice. Monday morning looks fine for most, with any lingering showers dying out and long sunny spells developing. It won't be as cold as today, and the raw wind will begin to ease down. The afternoon will stay dry and sunny for most, but Shetland will see a scattering of rain showers later on. Northeast England may well cloud over. Tuesday will be much milder and much less windy, I'm pleased to say, with long sunny spells for most.
The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
This is Sky News. Coming up, Swipe visits a town in Middlesex that's become the unlikely home of cutting-edge future battlefield technology. More after the break. This is Sky News. The top stories this hour. Boris Johnson says the UK has evidence that Russia's been developing the nerve agent Novichok for years. The Foreign Secretary also revealed international chemical weapons experts will visit Salisbury to test the substance used on former spy Sergei Skripal and his daughter. Weather warnings remain in place across large parts of the UK. Heavy snow and freezing temperatures have caused disruption on the roads, with numerous accidents reported. Turkish forces have seized control of the western Syrian city of Afrin from Kurdish militants. Well, staying with that story now, Turkey's President Erdogan said that the Turkish flag and that of the Free Syrian Army had been raised in the northwestern Syrian town, which was previously controlled by the Kurdish militia, the YPG. On the line from Turkey is Ibrahim Kalin, special advisor and spokesperson for the Turkish President Erdogan. Very good afternoon to you. First off, can we say that the whole of the Afrin region is under Turkish armed forces and FSA control now?
Yes, good afternoon. Yes, as of this moment, entire Afrin area, including small towns and cities and villages, have been secured from PYD, YPG terrorists and Turkish armed forces. Together with the Free Syrian Army, have taken control of all the areas. Now they're in the process of securing, especially the residential areas where there might be some traps and mines and IEDs. So they're working on securing the areas under their control.
So does this mean that Operation Olive Branch has been successful? And what would the next step be?
Well, an important stage in the operation has been completed. Of course, there is much more work to do now, securing all the areas. Afrin is a big area with over 400,000 people living there. We are providing humanitarian aid, and we want to make sure that, especially inside the cities and streets and houses, there are no mines, there are no traps, nothing, because PYD, YPG terrorists have been using those areas for a number of attacks against Turkey and building up military caches, etc. So there will be work to do in the days to come. And at the same time, of course, we will continue to provide humanitarian aid. But also we will work with the local people there to make sure that they govern themselves, their needs are provided. So there will be work to do. But an important phase of the operation has been successfully completed.
Yes, we're looking at some of the pictures on the screen at the moment of the region. Will Turkish troops leave the taken areas completely? And if so, when are they likely to do so?
Well, we have actually a good example that we said before with the Euphrates Shield operation that we conducted about a year and a half ago in the areas between Jarablus and Azzez and Rai area, which is to the east of the Afrin area, where we have conducted operation against ISIS terrorists at that time. We have eliminated more than 3,000 ISIS terrorists at that time. And once we secured all those areas, including Dabuk, which the ISIS terrorists claim to be almost like Armageddon type of place where there was going to be this kind of a big battle between good and evil, etc. You know, there are subverted theological beliefs attached to that place. All that area has been cleared, and we have returned the areas to the local people. It's run by the local people, and I think what is important is that during this entire 7-year Syrian war, something happened that never happened anywhere else in the Jarablus area, and that is the fact that after we cleared those areas, about 150,000 people, Syrians themselves who were refugees in Turkey, returned to their homes. Now we expect the same thing to happen in the Afrin area. In fact, we see already people who had to flee Afrin because of PYD, YPG elements there, beginning to go back. Once all those areas are completely secured, they will go back. Let me, if you allow me, I want to underline another important fact. When we began the Olive Branch operation, a number of allies and political commentators and others have raised questions about possible civilian casualties. And we've been extremely careful with that. We have avoided civilian casualties. And if you look at the pictures, the city has not been destroyed, in contrast to some other areas like Raqqa, Mosul, where the fight against ISIS or Daesh was very intense. You can see the difference very clearly. The city of Afrin has not been destroyed. We've been very careful with our air bombardment, and it has been very precise, precision bombs that have been used, and our armed forces and the Free Syrian Army fighters have been very careful in avoiding civilian casualties, not targeting historical buildings or places of worship. So now we are in the stage of stabilizing the Afrin area, and that should continue in the weeks to come. And of course, our security forces will remain there for the time being to make sure that the whole city and its residents are fully safe.
How concerned are you that Assad forces could try to retake the area?
We are confident that no such thing will happen at this point, as it did not happen in the Euphrates Shield area between Jarablus Rai and Azaz area, and we want to make sure that the civilians are protected not just against the PYD-YPG terrorists, but also against the regime attacks.
OK, thanks ever so much for your expertise and for speaking to us. We will, of course, monitor the situation there, but appreciate your time. Thank you. Now it's time for a look at all the latest technology news this week. Here's Swipe.
Welcome to Swipe. Here's what's coming up for you this week. That's it. Join us again for more Swipe next week. In the meantime, follow us on Twitter at Sky News Swipe. Bye-bye.
We're returning to our top story now. Boris Johnson has accused Russia of stockpiling the deadly nerve agent believed to have poisoned former spy Sergei Skripal and his daughter Yulia. Well, Britain has already taken sanctions against Russia since the attack, including the expulsion of 23 Russian diplomats. But there have been calls for more specific action to be taken against wealthy supporters of President Putin, many of whom live in London. Well, in Luxembourg is Russian journalist Roman Borisovich. Very good evening to you. Russia has been in the headlines virtually non-stop over the last couple of weeks or so following events in Salisbury. What do you make of the action that Theresa May has taken?
Well, I think it's definitely not enough. In fact, I believe that it's not just ineffective. I think it's detrimental for the overall cause. Because, well, let's think about this. Expulsion of diplomats. I mean, this is so-called war. This is not just gesture politics. This is some sort of a kabuki theater politics where, you know, things need to be not only ancient, they need to be explained to regular people, modern people. What does it mean? When at the height of Cold War in 1971, when Britain expelled 91 Russian diplomats, Soviet diplomats, that actually mattered because back then, these were the only Soviets in town. Right now, there are 200,000+ Russians roaming the streets of London, some with British passports. And there is every third of them is a spy and sleeper, an agent, and a former. So Russians doesn't have a lack of spies. Expelling diplomats, it's just a gesture, just like not sending a delegation to the football cup.
Well, you're talking about the World Cup then, because that's going to be a big point in the diary this summer for Russia. How much impact do you think that will have that British royals, British diplomats will be boycotting it?
None whatsoever. Again, it will be a subject for jokes and in the Russian kleptocratic elite. I mean, at the time the 23 Russian diplomats are being sent home, 123 of Russian oligarchs are laughing on their way to London that nothing has been done to them. That's what I'm saying. That's why it's more detrimental. For a second, the heartbeat of Russian kleptocracy stopped, awaiting. Maybe there's something. Maybe something's going to happen. Next thing they know, it's business as usual. It really actually it's emboldening them. They think they own Britain.
Well, here in Britain, Theresa May has been praised for her response because many people say that she has come out with these ideas, and she's tackled it very, very quickly after what happened in Salisbury. We seem to be in a bit of a tit for tat now where we have expelled Russian diplomats. They've done exactly the same. Where do we go from here? Do you think there will be further action, and will that lead to something far more serious?
Well, I think that, first of all, you'll see more diplomatic expulsion, but at the end of the day, to be efficient, to actually mean anything, the sanctions will have to get to the bottom. We'll have to hit the Russian kleptocracy where it really hurts, in its wallet. I mean, think about the kleptocracy. It's modus operandi. These are political elites who rob their country blind, steal the money, give it a quick spin in the laundromat of British offshore islands, and then invest the money in shares and bonds and properties and assets in London. Buy palaces, go buy planes, launder their reputations, build schools of government and wings in Tate Morton.
But it shouldn't just be down to Britain to do this. Surely, this is a global issue.
Yes, but the concentration of dirty money in Britain, especially Russian money in Britain, is by far the highest in the world. I mean, Deutsche Bank at some point calculated that £1 billion a month of dirty Russian money was coming to London for the last 10 years.
OK, Roman Borisovich, thanks ever so much for your thoughts. Appreciate your time.
Thank you very much for having me.
You're watching Sky News. Coming up, action. Welcome back. Let's cross over now to the Sky Sports News studio for an update.
Hello there. Chelsea and Leicester are trying to join Tottenham, Southampton and Manchester United in the FA Cup semi-finals. And Italy's Andrea Dovizioso has won the first MotoGP race of the season. He won the Qatar GP ahead of defending champion Marc Marquez. We'll bring you action at 5:45. There's more live on those stories on Sky Sports News, and we're back in the next hour.
From a fresh coastal breeze to watching the sunset on the Australian outback.
It'll be mostly fine tomorrow, although there will be a few coastal showers and the wind will be easing. For now, though, the Met Office still has amber weather warnings for snow over southwest England and yellow warnings for snow and ice for many other areas. Met Arian has also issued its warnings as well. There'll be widespread snow showers to end the afternoon, which will be frequent and prolonged over southwest England, and the snow showers will become fairly isolated overnight.
The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
You're watching Sky News. Coming up, the Foreign Secretary accuses Russia of having developed the nerve agent used in the Salisbury poisoning for at least 10 years. And there are specialists going to Salisbury for further forensics.